Awesome. Thanks all for the reminder to record, and welcome into session 4 of the What School Could Be Academy. We are jumping in to a discussion around student voice as we transition from a PBL question to an equity question, and now to a student voice question. And then we're going to wrap this entire crazy thing preview around metamodernism. That's how we're going to end my part of today. So believe it or not, I think it's going to make sense. Thank you for that quick reminder. And so this Students at the Center Hub is just a absolutely lovely resource for so many things. So it's in the Padlet, of course, but add it to your own sort of personal, deeper learning bank of resources. There's, I think, a lot of great people asking a lot of great questions. One of the leading scholars in this space is Dana Mitra, who has been asking for a very long time, like, what would happen if we started to view students as part of the solution instead of part of the problem? And I think our instincts all want to take us that way, but we don't take really active steps to go do that as often as we could. These are a group of Kentucky kids that I'll talk more about in just a second. And like others pull in all the way back in 1991, right? Like, why aren't we treating these kids as someone whose opinion matters in the equation? They are really bright. That's what's crazy, is you hang out with some of these kids and you realize, like, oh, you're smarter than me, which is awesome, but you don't yet have all the life experience, right? So, but like in terms of intellectual firepower, these kids are really, really bright. We got to see this in action. We get to see this in action in Kentucky on a regular basis. One of the really important component parts of what our story has been is the development of the Kentucky Student Voice team. And so there's an entire team of people, and it's gone over sort of generations of kids have been committed to the Student Voice team. This model of having a Student Voice team is something that I think also works at the school level. So, you know, many of you probably have like a student council or something like that, but may or may not have that much purpose. Like they might decide what the theme of prom is. But this is about like, this is the team whose job it is as co-designers of school with you. And so they have taken on a really critical role and done amazing things. So this is just from their own website, which is linked up. There's an entire column of the Padlet around the Kentucky Student Voice team's history. And they have been actively involved in changing law. They're really deeply involved in this legislative session again. They've wrote sort of multiple books, launched new websites where they're doing their own student journalism. So they took the idea of like a student newspaper that you would have in your school, and like, we want a statewide student newspaper for kids in school. So you can go see that at the new EDU. They are actively putting themselves into democratic conversations, from the state board of education to local school boards. In Kentucky, we have site-based decision-making councils, and that is sort of a school level committee that they are also taking up roles in. Here's some of the books they put out, and you can sort of see the kinds of things that are important to them. And one of those is like students as partners. Like, we want to be partners in this work of leading school forward. Then they also do really amazing work. And so they have a tool called the Student Voice Audit, where they will come in and work and talk and do surveys of all the kids to see like how real is student voice in your building. And so they will, school districts can contract with the Student Voice team to come in and do this kind of audit work around student voice. Just to give you a sense of like, what does this really look like when it's up and running and humming. Now, like, this has been going on for us in Kentucky for probably about 10, 12 years. And we're going to talk about the protocol today. But some new stuff is emerging that I really love and I want to share today that is way more global. And so this particular piece of research is one that I want us to sit with for a minute. It's relatively new, came out last year from Transcend. Transcend is really gaining my confidence and trust in the deeper learning leadership world. I don't know if you've heard of Transcend before or not, but they are a really growingly powerful nonprofit that is doing deeper learning leadership work across the country. So what happened though, they love this idea of student voice also, and where you're going to wind up today is where they want schools to go, and essentially like have real conversations with kids about what's important about school and what we can do. They then have a way to have those conversations, and you can, if you want to have your conversations in this way, that's fine. I put all the links in the Padlet, where all that data gets aggregated in a central data set that lives at the sort of national level for us here in the United States. And so they have data from 20,000 student conversations and survey response data from 20,000 students about like what is working and not working in school for them. And so here are the 6 major component parts of that 20,000 student strong feedback. Most kids say their experience in school feels irrelevant and offers few opportunities for agency and choice. That's a hard one to start with. Ouch. But not surprising. You're not at the What School Could Be Academy if you didn't think that that might be the #1 answer that kids would give in terms of how is school doing. They do. What's surprising is young kids are optimistic on the whole, and they notice when things are going well. And so in the data, there's also, they can describe what learning looks like when it's done well. So when it's really relevant, rigorous, and it's somewhat customized, personalized, kids are noticing that, and they are able to say that this is better. But right now, most kids are saying like that really great stuff, the best experiences. And remember, from the science of learning, learning is about relationships and experiences, right? That's what we need. We need those 2 component parts to get learning. And the kids are saying like the best experiences are happening outside of the core academics. They're happening in after school programs, athletic programs. They might be happening in a CTE course. They might be happening in an art course. You know, there's a lot of different places where great experiences can happen, but they're not typically in the core academics.
Hey, Justin, Janelle dropped in the chat.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that. She said
No.
they gathered data through the Transcend Leaps and it spoke really loud. So I don't want to read it. Go ahead and come up.
Yeah. Well, Janelle, jump in. Yeah. Tell us more about how this worked for you.
Yeah. So we were 1 in 10 in the nation to receive a Transcend Education grant. And that was the first part of it, is that we did, empathy interviews with learners, stakeholders, teachers, everything. And then we also gave the Transcend Leaps survey to our learners. And I was kind of like you, Justin. They've really started to really gain momentum with me of the research that around there. And whoa, I mean, when they started speaking to us, like I think it was over 58% of our learners, the school was not relevant or meaningful or authentic. And it really started that, I don't know, it hit us hard, and it started that the transformation was really foundational that we needed to change for them.
Yeah, good. Awesome. So your experience with this entire Transcend thing was a positive experience.
Very positive.
Did they give you like a nice sort of actionable report at the end? Did you get something out of this as a school leader?
Yeah, so we have our whole blueprint plan for it. And then we through our pilots, and yes, so we have a whole plan. Okay, awesome. So Kentuckians, I talked to Lou and Karen just last night about like, hey, Kentuckians, we might need to look at this. We've been doing our 100 student interview protocol for a decade or more, in our own little way of doing this job, but not in this sort of aggregated report form kind of way. And so for all the Kentucky deeper learning coaches in the room,
like, let's check this one out as a tool potentially that we might use more of here in the state. And that goes for all of you in the room, but you know, obviously I'm always trying to look for the best options, the best tools to do our work. And this one is an impressive new tool for me, and hearing confirmed from Janelle, like that sort of double confirmation that we need to put our eyes on this thing. Okay, so, and you can look at the others. The one around number 5, right? Like when adults listen to young people, it's dramatically helpful, and it increases their conviction in the necessity of rethinking the design of school. Kids want to help. They want you to listen and they want to help. And so it is possible, that kind of a co-design kind of thing. And we've seen it for a long time. That's why we're doing this today. But just to give you sort of some grounding from a research standpoint, like it's being reported all over the world.
Yeah,
okay.
Justin, do you want to, Constance, did you want to share? Because she's also been using, you know, conversations with kids. Did you want to share your experience with that as well, Constance?
Sure. Yeah. Part of what our design lab in DC public schools supports is also ensuring student voice informs design and decisions within the district. And, you know, part of that is through our larger ESSA requirements and school improvement plans, but we've been really trying to work to ensure that those authentically reflect student opinions too, and don't just become a kind of compliance measure. So in 2019, we did our first kind of homegrown set of student focus groups and empathy interviews to inform the school improvement plans, but we've been updating that now because we recently had schools redesignations and have been using the Transcend resource to kind of update some of, they have like a question bank in there that is helpful to kind of solicit information from students that's appropriate for different age levels and things. So that's been a helpful resource as we've been revising our process for that.
Sweet. Yay. I love it. Thanks, Constance. Thanks, Janelle. Excited to have some sort of structure and shared structures, sort of shared question banks. I'm really excited about all of that. And all of this is in the Padlet. So actually, since we're having this sort of really strong discussion around it, let me just pull out for a second and pop up the Padlet just so you can see. Look in this conversations with kids layer right here. This one is the booklet in terms of like the question banks and all the kind of stuff that Constance was just talking about. Will get you pointed in that direction. And then this second one here is all the results that I'm sort of sharing right now, aggregated across the 20,000 kids. And so that's the column to maybe go check out. And even as we wrap up sort of sprint 1 here, like this might be the direction that's really more interesting to you than using sort of our homegrown tools in the state. Yeah, jump in. Good. All right. So inside of there's unsurprising data. Unsurprising. We don't have to rehash it, but what it speaks to is like this is hyper consistent across all school settings in the United States. I cannot speak to Doha or Belgium and whether you would see the same kind of data, but we see it really consistently. It's not 100%, but you consistently see this kind of a number of like 30% of kids are seeing the relevance and 70% of kids are not seeing the relevance. Especially when you ask that question in about late middle school, early high school, that's when these numbers bottom out. If you were to ask that same question in 3rd grade or 4th grade, way more kids are happier with school. We sort of know what the curve looks like in terms of at what point do kids fall out of love with school? We really know what that curve looks like. And that bottom of that curve is in about 9th or 10th grade. And then actually in 11th and 12th grade, I don't know if it's seeing the end, I don't know what's going on, but the kids actually start seeing more relevance in school. Maybe it's like adulthood about to hit them and they're like, okay, I guess I got to warm up here. I don't know, but that's the curve. It's been consistent for sort of a long time. And then of course, when kids get engaged, they're like, yeah, we love it. Like this is, when you do the things that are sort of deeper learning things, you see a much higher percentage of kids. That's not all kids. Deeper learning is not a silver bullet. You are not, there's never going to be 100% satisfaction with every single thing we do in school, right? But if we can more consistently flip those numbers, and 70% of kids are seeing the relevance in school and they understand why we're doing the things we're doing, that of course would be a huge, massive gain. Okay. Now, student voice and all this surveying is actually the low-hanging fruit, believe it or not. So it sounds, to educators, this all sounds like it can be a bit hard, especially as you all as professional developers go out there and you have these meetings with schools who are new to the work. Like, this is my first year entering the deeper learning world, and you're like, hey, we got to let the kids have a lot more voice. That's a very scary thing to lots of educators. But I also want to reinforce, like, that is the low-hanging fruit. And so one of the things that the students at the Center Hub did a few years ago was put this report out on motivation, engagement, and student voice. It has this chart in it, and we adore this chart. We use it all the time. There is a spectrum to student voice and agency. That spectrum at the very at the low end of that spectrum. So if you're, I don't know if you're seeing my mouse, but over here on that sort of angled line is the sort of amount in the depth of student involvement that is going on. So like, kids just getting to express themselves is a really low level of student voice on the whole. When we ask for their feedback and consultation, like by doing these surveys and having like interview protocols, we get one more step up that ladder, maybe, like they're consulting with us. But there's still many more steps, like participation, where they do get to attend the meetings and the events. They come and they sit in on the decision-making councils or the school board meetings. There's another step beyond that where we really begin to see them as partners in doing school improvement work and really teaching kids. Like, there's a lot of older kids that would love to spend more time teaching younger kids. Beyond that, the kids would love to be more active and engaged and actively trying to solve problems in the world. This generation wants to solve problems. And then beyond all of that is a level of leadership. Very few schools in the world that I've ever seen enter this layer of leadership, activism, and leadership. It's hyper rare. It does exist. If you hung out with us last year, we did various little sprints, and we did a deeper learning details series. We talked to One Stone, which is a school in Idaho that lives up there in the leadership domain, where the students are the board. So the majority of seats on the board are student seats.
3/4 of the board, yeah.
Yeah, 3/4 of the board are student seats. And they do the taxes and they make all the critical decisions, including informing on personnel decisions, which is, I know, a crazy, like, what is happening? But like, there is a level up there that is available. We're not going to get that far in the academy. Okay, so this is not an academy that gets you all the way to, here's how you're going to get kids running your school board for you. That's not what we do. For the most part in Kentucky, we love it, but also recognize that, like, that's not the available step for most existing schools. The available steps for most existing schools live in that expression, consultation, participation kind of domains of student voice. Love, love, love this chart. All right, thoughts on that one? And then we're going to take a big change on the student voice. I mean, we're going to get back, we're going to wrap, we're starting with this, we're going to end with this kind of stuff, but I got two things I want to do before we wrap. So, but thoughts generally on the student voice chart, participation. Does that chart resonate with all of you?
You know, the worst, yeah, I mean, if anyone, feel free to jump in, but the worst thing you can do is ask students to participate and ask their thoughts and opinions and then ignore it. I've seen that happen before, and it's so bad, you know, because they already don't have a high level of trust you know, for adults, because they're just being told what to do all the time, and then they're sort of given this lifeline, and then it's just the rug kind of gets pulled out from under them. So and it's really, you know, I became aware of this. There's this woman, Robin Trevod, out of Australia, when I was working in India, and she came to talk to kids, and it was more around like their social lives and sort of social media. This was like over 10 years ago, when that was like kind of just coming on. And I was absolutely amazed at how she was able to very quickly get the students to open up and be super honest with her, just by actually listening. She was paraphrasing, validating, you know, doing all these things that, you know, we do as adults, but not all the time with kids. And they really connected, and they opened up with her. And then an administrator came in the room and said like 2 words, or said like 2 things, and the kids just shut down so fast. And it wasn't because she was an administrator, it was because of what she said. She didn't hear what they were saying. She said what she thinks they needed to hear, right? And it was like amazing to me, and it was this light bulb moment for me. So I've always looked at it differently. Like, you really, like, if you ask questions, you really have to listen to the answers and honor the experience of the students and what they're saying.
Yeah, Ben mentioned something that we see all the time as well. And for those that have already done the work, it usually takes about 2 to 3 questions. You're never going to get real openness and transparency with your first question of like what's working and not working for school. Most of the time, they're going to say something like lunch or PE or something like that. That's, you know, you have to probe a bit more deeply, but like when you show the openness and you show you're willing to listen, by like the 3rd question in, you're really going to start to get much more authentic answers. The kid, it's right there. It's easily available. This is not like you've got to position yourself as an ethnographer and spend time and like, no. Like by the 3rd or 4th question in, if you're being really honest and transparent and really listening, they will start really talking. So you'll start getting really good data pretty quickly.
You know, I'm just thinking about how we talked about why PBL isn't, you know, doesn't come to be. And I think too, is it again, the fear of asking the learners, is it like, why is this not just like, when I watch that One Stone video, it just seems like it's just what they do. You know, so thinking of like, why is this not the norm of our learning communities?
And Janelle's talking about a video called Rise that it's in the What School Could Be community. If you want to go check it out, and they have showings every once in a while. What School Could Be does like movie night showing kinds of things, and so like you can participate in a showing and discussion. And so that's the movie that came out of One Stone, the school in Idaho. But I honestly don't know. I mean, it is, well, it's about power, Janelle. You know, we built these things very adult centric. The entire idea, the thought of a school board being the sort of local members of a community who know better, even know better than the local educators. Like we've got former superintendents in the room with us today who had to spend a whole lot of time working with school boards. I really don't know how you do it. Good job. And there are well-meaning people that want really good things for kids, but the kids are in school all day, every day. They see there's a depth of knowledge that they have access to that, you know, no school board member is ever going to have access to. And why we don't equally value that data is, I don't know. I don't get it. Yeah. Abdul.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah, sorry, Abdu was gonna say, I'm just gonna say there's a lot of people in here that like every time someone comes off mute, I'm like always so like blown away by what they say. So I just want to encourage everybody, invite everybody to chime in. Don't feel shy.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. So yeah, I was just gonna say very quickly that for me, I think it goes back to the foundational beliefs that we hold about children. So if we think that they are whole and resourceful and they have the answers within, and our job is basically to facilitate that process, as opposed to seeing them as empty vessels that are waiting to be filled up, and then from there you would go to formulating powerful questions that are clean, without preconceptions or judgments, questions that are open-ended, and basically a coaching conversation, right? And that will open up basically any conversation with almost any kid. It's just a matter of time.
Mhm.
Yes,
Lovely,
maybe,
thanks, David.
for me,
Go ahead.
it's difficult to follow all the English, and this is a moment I would love to be able to talk to you in Dutch. Because I have some experience at our school in creating an other culture, because this is really, I think, what is needed. We all agree in giving students more voice to learn to listen to their opinions. But what I see at our school is that teachers and our leaders as well are very afraid of doing this. They are afraid of maybe conflicts may arise or getting a situation getting out of hand. And that's why at our school, we are really starting this culture shift in our meetings with teachers together, not directly in the classroom, but we are learning to really listen to each other, to learn to know that we may have different opinions and that that's okay, that sometimes we have to set our own opinion aside to come to new ideas. And I really feel that this creates a shift in the culture of our schools. And I believe that from next year on, we are going to try to get this other culture in the classrooms as well. And the deep democracy I told you about is really helping us with it. Deep democracy gives us a toolkit to give all our teachers and our managers at school the opportunity to try things out and to see how it's what the reactions of everybody is. So I don't know if you have heard about deep democracy in your place.
No, if you would put a link in chat, potentially, that would be awesome. I'm sure lots of us would love to go check it out.
Yes.
This is the place. This is the place where you can absolutely use democracy as the tool. And there's a long tradition of democratic schools. If you've been in education for a while, like you remember back to this long tradition that lives out there called democratic schools. And many researchers, scholars, in fact, Mary John O'Hare, who was the founding dean of the entire thing that became NextGen, that has become this stuff that we do, she was coming from a place of democracy in schooling, right? That was her own foundational piece. And then we've moved all this deeper learning stuff, but this relationship between democratic schools and democracy and deeper learning has always been there. And so, yeah, lewisdeepdemocracy.com. Yay, thank you for the share. And, you know, I love me a great toolkit. And so we're going to go check that out for sure. And I love the international context. Like I love Europe informing us here in the United States about like a tool that's really working well for them. So thank you.
Yes, and tomorrow I have a meeting with participants of Lewis Deep Democracy because they have done a survey with the Darwin University to see what the gains are in 10 years of using deep democracy in classrooms, of giving children other capacities to listen to each other and what they gained from it. So maybe I can share the results with you as well.
Yeah. I feel like I'm getting a Christmas gift. Thank you. I mean, for real, it feels like there's a gift here because the democracy piece, it's not well linked in America's deeper learning movement. It's not well linked yet. And it looks like Europe is ahead of us. So it's good to see. And like deeper learning and deep democracy, I mean, can we align these component parts? So yay, fun. I know, yeah, I feel like mission accomplished, team.
I was just going to add, you know, your question was why don't we do this? And I was kind of stuck circling on that one. I wrote down that like dictatorship is just a lot faster and democracy is slow, you know, and when you translate that to working with students, I think the building of co-creation, co-leadership capacity on both sides, like on both the sides of the adults and of the students, is a slow and messy process, and I think requires a new set of skills. Like, why don't we do that? It's because it's not a path that we've traveled down many times. So I think that's part of the struggle too, because I was thinking, like, on someone mentioned this on the leadership side, like asking the right questions, approaching the conversation in the right way, being Socratic, I suppose, in your interaction with young people is a skill that has to be developed. But also, to be realistic on the side of students, I think there's a certain learned helplessness that students need to recover from too, in order to enter into those roles of leadership. And so I think that's just a slow thing. And then the other thing that I think is juxtaposed against that is that the years especially in high school, go by so quickly. So you have a slow process that you're trying to, I know it's, 4 years, 5 years of high school. That seems like a long time, but I think when you're cultivating a deep leadership on the part of the students, you kind of get the sense that they're almost just passing through, So I think it's an important thing to do. I just think there are probably significant reasons like why we don't do that, and it'd be good to put your finger on that so you can kind of out those reasons and deal with them, So those are some of my thoughts on this.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's efficiencies. And I mean, this is where the factory model doesn't have time for kids' opinions. I think we've got to run a factory here. Look at this list of standards we've got to get through. So, but I mean, this is definitely a place where we're trying to go really fast, and maybe we're going quite slow. The kids are trying to tell us we're going quite slow. Like, you're not all that relevant to me. Where we might go slow and actually go a lot faster. Maybe. And I'm not also a frontline. Look, I'm a professor hanging out at university, so I always want to keep that in mind in terms of like not being on the front line. On the front lines, in working in practitioner spaces, you still have to do the standards. There's all the things you've got to do, right? So, okay. I want to pass along 2 additional tools. So we have Lewis Deep Democracy over there as a tool that is now in chat. So thank you for sharing. We have Transcend's great tool that we're seeing really great feedback from Minnesota and DC on. So thank you all for that as another great tool. Here's 2 more sort of mindset tools that work well for us that you might use in your own spaces. The first of those 2, and I'll start share again, is that we want to find the right altitude of our data. And then we want to connect that to liberatory design, because what we are still trying to do here is an equity project that ultimately is going to help more kids get access to that thinking curriculum that Linda Darling-Hammond is imploring us to do. Okay, so first tool out of the gate then is finding the right altitude. And the right altitude in this case is the street. And we'll let Jamila and Shane do some talking here.
Data that's all around us. To make it a little bit more broad and specific at the same time, if you think about our current paradigm, we kind of start really high level. Think of Google Maps, right? You see the satellite, gives you some information. You kind of know where the countries are and things of that sort, but it's high level. So SBAC scores would count as that. You get this data, everybody does all their learning. At the end, we find out that we were successful because the SBAC told us so. Here in Philadelphia, that would be the PSSA, High School Keystone. Or we look at graduations. We were successful because this amount of kids graduated. Or how many kids, came to school. Satellite data is helpful to some degree. But then you think about Google Maps and you go to the map data. All right, now you can see kind of the freeways. You see a little bit closer what you need to see. It gives you some information, help you know the route you might take. We think of that in schools as maybe your student family surveys, really, really beneficial. Likert scale, kind of give you some open-ended information. Common assessments can be helpful. I love, reading assessment, to be honest. I love that kind of stuff. But it only gives me some of the information. What we're arguing is that we need to get to the street. You're wondering what the restaurant looks like. Well, when you go on Google Maps, it shows you what it looks like. You can see the numbers, you know exactly where you need to go. That's street data. for us, when we think about education, that's the interview. You did this lesson. Well, what did the student actually think about that lesson? What was the impact of the lesson on the student? Even beforehand, how does the student think the lesson should go? That's interviews that we can do, analysis of student work. The amount of times I've heard teaching happen, but a review of student work not happening at all is outrageous. Street data says the story, the work, and the broader community. It's home visits, it's focus groups, it's community walks. It's all the golden nuggets that are there when we train our eyes to be right at eye level.
Brilliant.
Satellite data, I just want to say, if we haven't made it clear, has some issues, okay? Satellite data is a little bit late, okay? My son was in class yesterday, and you want to tell me how successful he was, I don't know, the end of the year? I can tell you right now, my son wasn't paying attention to half the classes he was in today. But if you want to use the assessment, you know, the PSSA later to tell you, you know, whether he was into it or not, you can, but it's lagging, doesn't help. It lends credibility to sweeping decisions far from the focus of learning. We all know the amount of decisions that are based on scores and how commodified students become, especially Black students, students who are divergent learners. It's inappropriate. And satellite data can reinforce single stories. When I see you in this bucket, that means you are this, and it's mostly negative. We're rejecting that. We're trying to choose street data instead.
Okay. So just pop forward then, just the refresher on these sort of levels of data. Does this sort of make sense for you and resonate for you? Feel like I could put you to the test and you all can, in the chat, give a sense of like what level of data does some of our key things that we do in school fall in. This is where we're asking an altitude question. You know, so like when I brought up that word altitude later, you're probably like, what the heck are you talking about? But there is an altitude question in our data. How close to the street are we in our data? Where are we at? Satellite. And so love me a little nounproject.com. If you don't know where all of these little images are coming from, nounproject.com. A tool that we do I've done it with both my own higher ed folks here, as well as out working in schools, is to begin to train our eyes to see the altitude of the data that we are working with, from that sort of satellite level to 30,000 feet to bird's eye to street level to microscopic, right? So there's levels of data even closer, tighter than the street. So that level of data matters a lot to its richness. And this is, if you've gone through a graduate program in education, this is like a lot of the difference between the sort of quantitative data that's satellite in nature and qualitative data that is microscopic in nature, right? Like neither one of these is necessarily bad, but there's sort of differences in terms of what we can get from these different data sets. All right, what about a teacher evaluation by the principal? Like what level of data do you feel like that would hit you at? Let me pop open chat. Emily has done street data seminars. All right, Emily, awesome. I'm going to do a couple of altitude things here and then jump in. We're going to come back to street data, and then when we do, Emily, jump in. Teacher evaluation by principal. I mean, it's not satellite, right? Like this is not 30,000 foot either. Like this is, yeah, I would say for me, it strikes me as a bit bird's eye. Yeah, bird's eye is popping in, Amadou Street. It's somewhere in that ballpark, right? We actually know the person, but most of a teacher evaluation, I don't know what it looks like everywhere in all your schools. Most teacher evaluation in America is principal pops in on a preset day and observes the class, makes some notes. So like, I wouldn't call it sort of street level data. It's bird's eye in that ballpark, but okay, fine. But we're going to test ourselves. So an individual student response to a quiz question. Okay, everyone's loving street, everybody's going satellite. This one strikes me as much more microscopic, like you're getting an individual data point, just one data point on one quiz. And that quiz overall might be trying to tell a satellite story or a 30,000 foot story, but that single data point feels a bit microscopic to me. But it can be, we're playing and learning our altitude, right? So that's fine. We're learning altitude here. What about a student's transcript? Yeah, it's far. It's up there in the clouds somewhere. It's telling a really broad story on a single piece of paper. In Mars, Abdu. Yeah, lovely. Exactly. Beautiful. Okay, awesome. What about a student portfolio defense? Yeah, this one feels like street data to me, right? And we're seeing it pop in. So you feel the difference now, like that level of data is a level of data that we might consider to be street data, because like this is super real. It's hyper focused on a single individual. We're getting a single individual's story. It's not microscopic. A student portfolio defense, if you sat in on portfolio defenses, like they're defending a few sort of artifacts across their work. They're not defending every single thing they did on every single quiz. And so street is sort of like a good place for that. Okay, fine. Now here's the key, team, is this is great. That little thing that we just did is a great thing to do in your own teams from a leadership standpoint. And so hold on, I don't want to get there yet. Stop, Shane.
Yeah.
Over in the Padlet, and we won't take the time right now, but like this is a good opportunity under this activity here. There is a link to a Google Doc, which you can make a copy of. Feel free, and I can put a /copy up there if you want. Hold on, I'll get one real fast before you guys start typing in it. That will give you just a Google Excel sheet to play with, and you can have breakout rooms across the bottom, right? And essentially ask them to like, can you distinguish the differences in the data in your school? So like, of course, up at the satellite level, we're going to be seeing things like the MAP scores or whatever the test of choice is. And maybe MAP is 30,000 foot versus the state standardized test, which is a once a year kind of test as satellite. I don't know. You can distinguish it. The point is like just training our eyes to see these differences in what kind of data is coming at us. So that always makes for sort of a really great breakout activity. That sort of breakout activity lends itself really well, these questions, to sort of a common agreement about where do we want to work as a team? What level of data is important to us as a team that we want to use to drive our own work? And sort of inevitably, everybody circles around to like that street level of data is the level of data that we value the most. We don't value the 30,000 foot test score that's a year behind. It's lagging data that, you know, everybody is sort of trying to tell us that's important, that the legislature might think is important. For us as a team in a building, that street level of data is a lot more important in our own decision making. So you can sort of get a normative agreement around the level of data that you want to work with. And then once you can sort of get that normative agreement around the level of data that you want to work with, that's when you pop back around to the street data piece, because street data then is going to take us somewhere specific, right? So once you agree to that norm, then we'll live in that norm. We know what to do with that norm.
Yeah, so another sort of way of thinking about this is that you want to make a decision about something, and you need information. You need like really good information to make a really good decision. And the more information you have, the more data you have that's relevant, will help you make the best decision. And so by using irrelevant data, your decision's not going to be very good, you know, because you're making a decision based on, you know, stuff that isn't actually helping you understand the situation any better. So when they talk about the different levels of data, if you're making decisions that affect kids now on information from a year ago, that's really not, you're not making a good decision, because you're changing something that has an effect now, but the data you have is from something that happened a year ago. So, you know, I like the altitude, the thing, but even if you get the right altitude, but the data isn't, you know, something that actually is relevant to the decision you're making, it's not really going to help you. So really think really hard about, you know, what do you want to make a decision about, and what information is going to help you understand what's happening clearly. And so, like, you know, we've all like made a survey, given out a survey, got responses, and then realized we actually didn't get any of the information we needed to understand what's taking place or make a decision, right? Because we got data that wasn't useful. So just be very, very thoughtful about sort of when you think about, I need to make a decision, you know, what data do I have available, or what data do I need to make good decisions?
All right, lovely. Emily said you had done some of the street data training, and I don't know if you're willing to come off mute and say a little bit about it. Emily's hearing us. She looked like she had a busy morning going on. So let me tie a bow on this one. We're getting towards the end, and I want to have a discussion about how Sprint 1 went. So the video is in the chat, the entire webinar that they held. Shane Safir and Jamila Dugan both are in that webinar, the authors, and this is you know, if you don't have this book in your library, please put this book in your library. Like, this is critical data. This is a critical tool that we need in our deeper learning leadership work. But what I want to circle back around to in this is that, I'm going to stop her. Once you start to see the street level data and you really start to focus the street level data, a very different story begins to emerge. And it's a lot more useful story, because one of the things we can see in a street level data is what's right with you. Instead of, like, our satellite level data is very focused on what's wrong with you. And like, why is this kid still novice? Damn it, these novice. That's our language in Kentucky. Sorry. So we have to worry about those things. But it's hard to see what's right at that satellite level view. But when you get to the street level view, you can begin to see what's right with you. And you can really focus on that question. And that's a way more useful question. We're going to close Sprint 1. Sprint 2 takes us into performance assessment land. And in performance assessment, you can see, like, if we focus on street level data in our assessment model, we're going to get to see a very different picture emerge. And performance assessment gives us really a great way to do assessment that allows us to see street level data and really what's right with kids much more. So we'll get there. My second big tool that I want to just put in your toolkits, and all of this is in the Padlet and you can have time with, is liberatory design. So liberatory design is an intentional construct. It comes from the world of design thinking, which you all have probably seen some exposure to, Stanford University. One of my colleagues, the office right next to me, is John Nash, and put out a great book on design thinking in schools. One of our team members here at UK. If you want to go check out his book, A Leader's Guide to Collaborating for Improvement. Lots of, you see us at NextGen and at UK, we always have sort of lots of toolsy kinds of things. Just like Abdu was asking about the Google form, the Google spreadsheet. Like, you don't have to fill it out, but it's full of toolsy kinds of things. And we've always loved those kinds of, like, tools that you can use with leaders. And ultimately, design thinking is one sort of massive tool that you can use to do work on changing our systems. So you know that it exists, right? But one of the limitations around design and design thinking is that it's not as useful for getting to sort of the root causes of inequity. that we sort of know exist in our current system, and that whatever the next system is, we know we don't want all of those root causes of inequity. So when you're doing human-centered design work and you're solving a problem real time, there's a tendency to just see the surface level and not be able to go deeper with specific student populations to really understand sort of root causes of inequity. In this way, I want you to see the world of design as a very modernist thing. And then there's this equity work, right? And if you all have done a lot of equity work in your lives, like, equity work is really good at criticism. Like, you've probably been in lots of equity sessions where we spend a lot of time really trying to see the flaws, see what's wrong, individual student stories of being marginalized. But frequently my own frustrations with equity work have left me sort of like with a so what? Like, I agree. We have a highly oppressive education system. Check. I need no further convincing. I'm on board. So now what? And so a lot of equity work lives there. So this is where liberatory design seeks to try to do both of these, intersect these two worlds. Use design thinking as a tool, really intentionally, with a liberatory equity lens, to use these tools of design thinking to make real change in the world, but really be hyper-focused on equity. So that is why we love liberatory design thinking. It works well in between those two spaces. This is one of the creators of, and she summarizes it in 1 minute, so we'll just let her summarize it.
So liberatory design is an evolution of design thinking, pulling on the innovative potential of it, while also building and learning from fields like organizing and complexity theory and equity change. And it is a problem-solving methodology that supports us to try to mitigate unintended consequences while also creating liberatory potential for really changing things to be radically different. So it helps us translate our equity values into action. Is my cat in the shot?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, the cat popped into the shot. I actually like that part of the video. So this is one of the co-authors of the work at the Stanford Design School, working with the National Equity Project. That's sort of the teaming together that has emerged and where this work roots itself from. All of that stuff is linked up in the Padlet, of course. So go check it all out on your time later. Sorry, I gotta get better at papping through these. And so this is what liberatory design is trying to do. It's trying to interrupt inequity and increase opportunity for those most impacted by oppression, transforming these power relationships, right? We're going to have to mess with power. Linda Darling Hammond started us off with saying the current power dynamics are not built well for kids that are out of power. So we're going to have to mess with power. And it provides a toolkit, a flexible process. And that is, of course, what I love about it. When you go out and you click on these links in the Padlet, right, go explore. One of the things that's most useful is there is this liberatory design card deck that I adore this thing. Like, I keep it with me all the time. I'm sure it is, I should have had it in my hands. But I do adore this liberatory design card deck. Like, I do keep it right here. Here it is. I keep it with me at all times. All right, so this is the liberatory design card deck. There's actually a newer version from this one. This is a great thing to pick up. It is both a process, but it is also a set of liberatory design mindsets. The liberatory design mindsets, for me, are the absolutely most valuable as we engage this work of deeper learning. So this set of mindsets looks like this on a given card. This one is practice self-awareness. And then on the back of the card, it gives you sort of a why and a how. And what I really love about these cards is they're so great in teams. So when you have your little school design team that is trying to do some reform and trying to build a new model and all that stuff, like, are we approaching that work from liberatory mindsets and knowing who's good at what things on our team? Like, who's really good at recognizing oppression? Like, that might be a different person who is really good at liberatory collaboration. I'm not so great at collaboration personally. I'm just not. And so like, it's important for me to have a team around me. Like Karen Perry on our team is mind-blowingly good at liberatory collaboration. Okay, awesome, right? So do you have a team that's good at these things? And then, so there's an example of liberatory collaboration. That's the one I'm not so good at, just so you can dive in and see. And there's more that I'm not very good at. And you need to be self-aware enough to know who you are as a liberatory designer, and your own positionality, your own privilege. All of that stuff can live in here, but it's living in here in a toolkit that lets us do something, right? We're not just going to unpack all of our privilege and just like lay inside of our privilege and not do anything. Like a lot of our equity conversations can take us to a place of a dead end of frustration. Like this is not a dead end. This is going to give us something to do. Okay, these are the card decks, and then this is a process, right, of seeing the system, empathizing, defining, inquiring. And so here's where the design thinking process comes in and still works. We're going to do something. We're just going to do that thing in a much more focused liberatory fashion than we would have otherwise done that thing. Okay, so that is the liberatory design world. Here is as promised, the meta modernism thing coming back. Remember, I started this entire sprint about this oscillation that we are living in. We're oscillating between the modern and the postmodern. And we're just struggling with the systems that were built in a modern world, now having to sort of really be part of this postmodern critical space where we are seeing the flaws and we're seeing all the marginalization, we're seeing all the oppression, and we really want to see all those things simultaneously. We want to do both projects. So I think liberatory design is one of the most clear articulations of what to do as a meta-modern designer, as a person who is going to be comfortable in the oscillation, who embraces the criticisms of postmodernism, and then simultaneously says there's still a lot of value in our existing structures and systems. Like, I still want public schools to exist. That's not a thing I want to go away. But simultaneously, I want to see the criticism. And that liberatory design, this level of data, street level data with liberatory design, is essentially letting you see the numbers on the clock there, right? Like the two poles, there is a new way forward, but it's with street data. It is focused on a liberatory mindsets. I think that is sort of the way that we can live in this meta-modern world. All right, I will stop, Ben, and turn it over to you.
Real quick, yeah, sorry, Sean dropped some a comment in there that he says he has these cards, he loves them, and he uses them for community meetings. So I wondered if you wanted to share real quick before we jump into some discussion and reflection.
Yeah. Well, I got them from the New Schools Venture Fund. They're partners in launching my school here in Cleveland. And so one of the criteria for being one of the schools is being a liberatory design school. And so throughout the first year of me doing like our research and analysis on what type of school to build to ensure that this school is a school that's for the community, informed by the community, I have community meetings. And so it's been a blessing to be able to have them because it's really the core of my agenda. And so we'll just pick a card and it really steers the conversation so that I'm not enforcing my views on what I think the community needs, but the community, which is our parents, teachers, students, business owners, has buy-in into the say and say into how we're building the school. So I love them.
Awesome. I think, Sean, that's great to hear. Thanks for sharing that. I think, you know, two things that if you can tell, we like both Justin and I, we love tools, we love protocols. You know, oftentimes it's you have that third point, and anytime you can take a third point and use that to focus and structure, you know, conversations, it's super helpful because then it becomes less about the individual. Plus, you're getting your thinking out because oftentimes when friction arises, when there's a misalignment of assumptions, like someone says something and they assume they're communicating this, and someone hears it but hears something else and assumes they mean something else. And so when you have those misalignment of assumptions, you get friction. And so anytime you can use a tool to get, you know, that focus on a third point, plus you get that thinking out. And so that's when the real good stuff happens, especially when you're working with staff, is when you can get people's thinking visible and out for everybody to play with. And so if we have playful mindsets and we're getting our thinking out, that's when the gold happens.
And I also quickly shared, like, if you, about
Yeah.
the cards, they really help to steer like what you need. So like if you need more voices around a certain subject, it gives you the talking prompts. And once you hear what you're looking for, they say, okay, now ask this. And so it's really useful. You really can just run a full meeting off of one or two cards. They're really useful. I recommend them.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Sean. A ringing endorsement. I love it. It's we've got to have power conversations. We're not going to change power dynamics if we can't all get comfortable talking about power. And so this is a tool set. You know, don't wade into these waters on your own without having some tools in your backpack. Okay, I want to recap, and then Ben is going to have a few minutes where we just start talking about the experience. Recap. This little journey that we just went in on this sprint is the recommended journey to begin a deeper learning design effort with. So as you're out there doing professional development, you're building schools like Sean is, Mark is, you want to help people fall in love early. A taste of PBL early is good. It's a good thing. Helps people fall in love with it, right? So we did some PBL right up off the top because it lets us see what different looks like. We're going to show the movie most likely to succeed, right? We're going to get a sense of like what could learning be. Good job. Then we're going to exercise strategic patience with PBL. We are not going to just run at that thing and just try to do the candy all at one time. Instead, what we're going to do is start to lay some foundations. And you're going to lay those foundations through having equity conversations, through beginning to talk about like what is important to us. Do we have a vision of equity for all kids? Can we get there as a team? And then from that standpoint, you should be able to start to make it actionable. And that's where today is all about making that actionable, which is going and gathering street level data. Go talk to kids. That's the number one thing that a school that is engaged in deeper learning work must do. It's an absolute must. If you don't do it, I don't think your effort will succeed. It's that important. In our work in Kentucky over a decade, the schools that took it seriously and talked to kids and listened and really heard what they're trying to say, those were the schools where deeper learning roots dug deeper. And that's where we saw the real good stuff grow. So this little sprint at the beginning, all of our PDs from our next gen academies over these many years is enough to get them interested. And then as quickly as we can feasibly, we go talk to kids. So that is, from a playbook standpoint, a playbook that has worked really well for us over time. We're going to do, the next thing is performance assessment. We'll get there in a week. We're going to take a week off and then we'll do it again. But like, this is the first place to get to. Go talk to kids. Okay, Thanks, team, for being on Sprint 1. Ben has a few questions about how it went.
Well, yeah, so I guess maybe to be super clear, you have a task to seek out and talk to 5 students and educators. And Justin, you put that on the Padlet, right?
Yeah, so we put our 100 student interview protocol. If you go up 2 slides, you'll see the 100 student interview protocol that we've used in Kentucky these many years is in the Padlet, and you can use that. You can use the Transcend Learning thing. You can go and have conversations with the Liberatory Design card deck if you want. You can have conversations with educators about the altitude of your data. Like, if this was a actual higher ed class, I would now give you this as an assignment, right? This would be the assignment. Go do this. And when we run the academies, it's an assignment for real. Go do this, because then we bring the data back and we discuss it as an academy together. So you all were running this really fast this semester. This is not for credit. And so like, I'm not gonna like give you a low grade if you don't go do it. But like, would be a good time to test out one of the ideas you learned in Sprint 1. And if I could only get you to do one thing, it would be at least go talk to 5 kids.
All right, awesome. Okay, so we're going to do some reflection and discussion now. So as we wrap up, and then we're going to ask you to fill out just a super quick survey for us. We made some intentional design choices in this. We tested out some of these design choices last fall, and we're continuing to improve, and we want to hear your feedback for Sprint 2. So the discussion is going to be a 3-2-1. So we're going to give you 2 minutes to think, and then we're going to open some breakout rooms and send you in the rooms. And so we're going to kind of do a whip around. So we would like you to share 3 words that describe your experience, 2 sentences to summarize your learning, and 1 feeling you're leaving this first sprint with. And this is very difficult, all right? But we're going to ask you to try your best to stick to this. So 3 words to describe your experience, 2 sentences to summarize your learning, and then one feeling you're leaving with. And then after, if we have time and everybody gets through, then it's open for discussion, all right? But we want to try and just consolidate our thinking quickly. And then we're going to bring you all back, and we're going to have you fill out a survey. It's a super quick 6-question survey. So I'm going to start a timer now for 2 minutes. We're all just going to sit, and we're going to think about those 3 things. So 3 words that describe your experience, 2 sentences to summarize your learning, and 1 feeling. And I'll drop those in the chat, but I'll start my timer because we're running down. So you got 2 minutes to think.